10 minutes ago.
I'm working on it. Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to call the regular meeting of the Hood River Salmon Bridge Authority to order at 2:00 p.m. We'll do a roll call. Washington, we have Commissioners Anderson. I believe Commissioner Keithler is online. Commissioner Gibson, I am not seeing, so we will have Commissioner Gilchrist step in for him. And then we also have Commissioner Wilson is present from the Washington side, but is not a voting right at this time. On the Oregon side, we have Commissioners Fox and Polson are present. Commissioner Babson is absent. Commissioner Thompson will be filling in for Babbitt at this time, and Commissioner Duvall is present as well. Don't see Commissioner Gibson anywhere yet. Okay. With that, we will move into our agenda. Is there any changes or additions to the agenda?
Yes. You want to add your discussion item under the informational items?
Sure, sounds good.
What is that to add?
This there, yeah. So there was the emailed out the IGA between the
County River Gorge Commission and Hood River County.
Hood River County, and I thought that was worth discussing.
Okay. Is there anything else? With that, I would entertain a motion to adopt the business agenda with an additional IGA for the Gorge Commission.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Keithler, I saw you were unmuted.
I lost you guys. Are you looking for my eye?
Oh, we're almost there. Let the record also show Commissioner Alternate Berger is present as well online. With that, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Marla?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to the correction of the minutes from March 25th. What was the correction that needed to be made?
I noticed that we have from the consent agenda through the Kiewit final motion on page 6 that we have different people absent and present, but I don't see it reflected on the minutes. So I was wondering if there could be clarification for who was absent and who was voting.
Okay, are there any other changes to the minutes? With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes with the changes Commissioner Thomas has mentioned.
So moved.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Public comment. We will now open public comment for 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone online or in the room who'd like to provide public comment? I am not seeing anyone. Going twice. Last chance. Okay, I will close public comment. We will move into the executive reports, co-chair's report. Commissioner Fox, is there anything you'd like to mention?
No, not at this time. In the engineering construction, yes.
Okay. I will defer as well. We'll move on to project director bridge update.
All right, couple highlights on the Washington side, the legislative redistricting that was brought up, I think, at the last meeting. That did fail its appeals at the Supreme ninth. Yep. So that redistricting will happen. We have already started meeting with some of the new representatives. We met with Rep. Waters on the 2nd. We've got a meeting with Rep. Harris on the 16th and Senator King on the 22nd. So we'll continue to monitor that as it kind of changes and evolves. I know Senator King is looking to make some changes potentially, with things, depending on how that evolves, but we'll see what comes out of that. Local activities, the HNTB contract has now been fully reassigned over to the Bridge Authority. So that is completely done. That is the only contract that we are going to reassign over from the port. All the rest of the contracts have either been procured by the Bridge Authority or will be procured in the next couple of months. So we were not going to transfer over any of the contracts for a month or two, unless somebody wants to do that, but we can if somebody wants to, but
Well,
we're not
and-
going to.
Technically, I don't think that we can on like PFM because they are the port's financial advisors and we actually
Can't do
added
that.
this project on to their list of things to do. So, but we're working on getting
Yeah.
an
A new
official
contract.
new contract with the Bridge Authority.
All right, the Washington funding, I am coordinating with Washington Southwest Region. Waiting on governors to sign final legislation in Oregon and Washington so that they can take that to the Office of Financial Management on the Washington side in order to make sure everybody's on the same page with us getting the full 15 million in state funds instead of just the 5 million. So we already have an agreement for the 5 million. If everything goes well, we will just be able to edit that and change the number to 15. We just got to get everybody on the same page that that's what the legislation said. So I will continue to work with them on that. Part of that is the HB 5201, which was passed through Oregon, and they're waiting on the governor to sign that. So I've emailed the lobbyists to see if we can get the documents or when the governor will sign it so that we can make sure Oregon and Washington are on the same page. Raise grant, we are progressing through some of the raise grant signatures. We had a few things that we had signed today. It looks like we will finalize that grant, I think, here in April, so that we'll be able to actually start the raise grant in May. Just a reminder that is really geared towards the bike ped and the action plan. We did identify about $400,000 in the raise grant that would go to reimbursing the locals for their input into the action plan.
Yeah.
So we will need to bring to you all some agreements so with whatever agencies we end up doing agreements with. So just something to be aware of that'll be happening. So, but we did identify some of that money to hopefully reimburse them so we get better involvement. So, on the treaty tribe MOAs, they have been a lot more active in the last few weeks. We had a virtual meeting with the Yakima Nation that I thought went really well. I don't know if Commissioner Fox, you want to add anything to that? Forget them all.
No.
Okay. So I thought it went really well. We met their new lawyer was the purpose of the meeting. Their previous lawyer has moved on to other things. We are working on an in-person meeting with them at their council on May 8th. Nez Perce is working through legal counsel. I don't know if Mark is on. I don't see him.
I'm on by phone. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, Mark. Any update from Nez Perce on the May 7th potential date?
So we had a meeting with FHWA and Oregon DOJ and the Nez Perce Council to go over some comments that FHWA and we had made on the MOA. I think we still have quite a ways to go, and they have a very slow political process. But there's no obstacles that we can't overcome. Just some differences that we need to talk through, and they're moving toward a staff-to-staff meeting and then bringing it to the council.
Okay. So we'll continue those conversations. Umatilla, we have our next meeting tomorrow. So we will hopefully be taking to them some responses to their input on. I know I'm gonna stop at the right time. So I hope. We are going to be responding to them to what they proposed as some of the mitigation factors. So we'll have a meeting, and as Commissioner Fox was indicating, that is part of our meeting today. We'll talk through that and then we'll meet with them tomorrow and relay that information over to them. Warm Springs, we went down and had a meeting with them last Wednesday. It was an in-person meeting. Got a lot of feedback from them on their perspective on the project and their perspective of where the project sits within their lands. That meeting was with FHWA and ODOT. We've got some work to do there. We are setting up and did get the ability to set up quarterly meetings with their council as well as monthly meetings with their staff. So we're working on getting that set up.
That was really good.
It was a good meeting. I mean,
That was a positive.
yeah, we learned a lot from them. So it's always good to go and listen and hear their perspectives. Each one of the tribes has a different perspective and a different history to the region. So it's good to kind of understand where they're coming from. So we'll continue to progress that as well. On the progressive design build contract, the contract was sent to Kiewit on Friday. They are running it through their channels to get signature. We should have that. I think he said no later than Wednesday. So we're expecting that to come back and then we will, that'll finalize that contract. They're currently working under the limited notice to proceed. So we're good, with all of that. Anything else?
So latest communication said that they are spending all day today to review. And,
So Marla, I was kind of thinking this is a public opportunity to have maybe Jake and James do a little signature, even though it's fake, but it's a major milestone for this project, putting Kiewit under contract.
Yeah, we announced it when we secured, decided to move forward into contracting with them. What is the number?
7.2.
$7.2 million.
So under the ceiling, so I feel like that's noteworthy. So yeah, I would agree. I don't know we could talk through and figure out if we want to do like a stage signing or if we just do more of like a natural photo when they're out there, like a chair meeting them.
Okay.
So
On
James did not.
Do you want to drink a jug of milk? Like if. What race? 800.
5,500.
Yeah, the winner always, well, you can choose orange juice, but nobody can do that when the bridge is finished.
And how many days do we have left?
Yes. About to drop under 2,000.
Up on a milestone here.
Yeah.
So with the contract, we issue the notice to award, meaning that we are sending the contract for them to sign. And it's going to be signed by their vice president, who is in Nebraska, I believe. His name is Brad Ford. And James is not the signature.
Yeah.
So
He can say.
So it would be really.
I'm surprised they haven't reached out to us because normally contractors like to do this kind of a signing thing. They're on publicity.
Yeah. We also, just a little side update to this, we also have a meeting with Kiewit on Wednesday and Thursday of this week with the bridge, their bridge teams. Were you going to talk about this during the engineering thing?
Go ahead.
To go through some alternatives and try to get down to a couple preferred or couple alternatives, just to kind of quickly get through that. So we're bringing in some national experts that can weed through that stuff fairly quickly. So some of our national experts, Kiewit's national experts, there's a segmental person that works for KMC that's coming in that used to work for Kiewit. So it should be a way to get to some refined design and quickly to some kind of if we are going to look at alternatives, what we're going to look at. So
What we're going to do here is
Wednesday,
do a short list.
yeah, we'll try to get down to one or two. And then, identify exactly what we need to look at in those one or two. And mostly based on schedule cost and flexibility that it gives us. So
they are doing this under the limited notice to proceed, which expires April 12th.
Better hurry up and get that contract signed.
Yes. We made it short. We did send back some preliminary some comments on the preliminary engineering agreement with BNSF. This was just one of the first agreements that we'll do of many with them. But it gets it rolling. So our legal gave us some comments and we provided that back to BNSF. So we'll see, what their response is to those comments. Aesthetics committee, I will leave that. I think Eric can cover that. That's it.
That included the action items. Let's move into the legal report.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, Mike was very efficient in giving a report on most of the items that were on my list, but I have a couple that we can go through. With respect to the entity status legislation that Foster Garvey was working on, they've determined, as you know, that the commissioners and alternates are not required under Oregon law to submit statements of economic interest. And Foster Garvey is assisting the CFO in complying with budget law requirements. With respect to the janitorial services contract, I understand it was reviewed and issued to the service provider. So that's in play. And finally, the only unreported matter is with respect to the TIFI loan. Foster Garvey is assisted in making the credit presentation and in providing responses to the rating agency's follow-up questions. That's really all I have to report. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions from?
One question that kind of looking at both you and Mike, the tentative agreement, the draft agreement with you, Matilda, we're satisfied, legal is satisfied with where it stands.
I did not send the edits until we have our conversation today that we made to attachment E, but the main agreement has been reviewed. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's been reviewed by us and by FHWA, and I believe even ODOT's looked at it as well.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Thank you very much, Judy. Let's move on to the lobbyist reports.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll get going. I don't see anyone else. As was kind of indicated earlier, we're sort of in this transition phase around shifting districts, legislative districts that the project is in. And we are currently in the outreach to both the previous legislative district, which was the 14th, to the new legislative district, which is the 17th. One of the things that I want to make clear, I have had a conversation with Senator King, who obviously has been one of the biggest benefactors, or person who has done the most to help this project. Did get redistricted out. He is currently trying to figure out what his next move is. If he's going to go back into the 14th, which would require a physical move by him, he would have to move to do that. He did not rule that out when I talked to him. He certainly wants to stay in the legislative process. And he also indicated no matter what, he's going to continue to be a staunch supporter of this project. So we are a bit in flux as far as kind of our local elected leadership. That's not going to change, though, how we proceed. We are doing the initial outreach to the regional legislators right now, but we're going to continue to work on also the legislative leadership as well as transportation leadership in the state of Washington over the next few months. We are looking at trying to target some sort of an event in the early fall, is what we're initially looking at, where we do a big update meeting and invite legislators from around the state on the Washington side to the site, and again, do an update on briefing. I think we're going to have a lot, obviously, all the work that you guys have done. We're going to have a lot to report. Part of our strategy is certainly to make sure that we continue to broadly articulate all the progress that we are making, not just in funding, but also with the signing, hopefully signing of a contractor, and just really demonstrate the forward progress that we're on. We are also monitoring developments relative to any new transportation package. We are starting to hear conversations with legislators about the need for another transportation package. That's going to be kind of our key opportunity to provide any additional funding from Washington State, at least in the near term. In the absence of efforts around a new transportation package, our job is going to be to protect the 75 million that we did get. And I think part of the challenge that we're all going to start talking about is, number one, there are most of the projects in Washington State are coming in significantly underfunded. That's the initial problem. The other thing that we're all going to be monitoring is the repeal of Washington State's Climate Commitment Act, which is Initiative 2117, which a significant portion of that resource does go into the transportation budget, not necessarily for roads, but certainly for transit and other projects around bike ped, transit, all of those kinds of things. The reason we're monitoring that is because if that passes, there's going to be an additional significant hole in the transportation budget that will need to be filled in some way. And again, we're not sure whether that's going to be an opportunity or a real challenge. All of those things are going to swirl over the next 3 to 6 months. So there's going to be a lot going on. We will be, doing everything we can to make sure that this project is front and center of everybody's mind and is positioned to not just maintain, but hopefully grow the amount of Washington State resource. So I just threw a lot out. I know that there's a lot going on. I'm happy to answer any questions for folks.
Hey, Brad, Mike Fox, have you thought about trying to get the governor down here?
I don't think that there's a ton of value in getting the current governor down here, just because he's going to be out the door in January with a new governor. And right now, the election for who's going to take over is still a little murky, but I do think that is opening up the conversation to the gubernatorial candidates, I think is going to be valuable, but I want to get through the primary before we do that. So at least we're down to 2 people that we try and articulate to versus 3 or 4
that was
right now.
The second question for me. So do we have plans to go after the 2 final candidates and at least get them to be aware of our project?
Yes, we will be doing that. So the primary is in August. So we'll be doing that outreach, after August. In addition, and this is to my earlier comments, because there's going to be a lot of change in the state legislative delegation, we're also going to be working on outreach to candidates in both the 17th, the new 17th, and then the old 14th, just because, again, we have a ton of population that just uses the bridge, and making any new candidates or potential candidates aware of it is going to be part of the effort this fall.
Brad, would it make sense, because we know there's kind of 2 front runners for the election for governor and they should be doing a large tour to try to get them to stop by during that tour. That might be something that they could get a picture of with some of us. I think in Washington, we kind of know who it's likely going to be, at least at this point.
Yeah, but I don't want to do that until again, some of this is just allowing politics to play out. Short answer is yes, Mike, but I want to give a little bit more time before we actually engage in that for the field to sort itself out.
Okay. Thank you, Brad. Any other questions for Mr. Boswell? All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Got it. Bye, guys.
Jim, you have an update for us?
Yes, sir. Well, we're in a little bit of a holding pattern here right now, in Washington, kind of in a lull between tracking what's happening with the bridge improvement program, waiting on those awards to come out. Keep hearing some rumblings, but nothing has been released. We'll have to see. The timing on that. My guess is we still probably have a little bit of time. They just did a big package of grants unrelated to this. So they've got a lot that they're working through over at Federal Highways. And, this one, obviously, with the multi-year funding streams, I think they're probably weighing a lot of different things in terms of making their final decisions. I will say on that, they did issue the notice of funding availability for the last 2 years of the MPDG, the mega and the infra, which, we were successful last time. So I don't have the deadline for that in front of me, but depending on how we do at Bridge, we can continue to monitor and see if there's any strategic value in at least engaging on discussions around whether or not it would make sense to try to come back in. I mean, my initial thought would probably be no, but obviously it's an opportunity, and it's, again, just like a lot of these programs they've done lately, they're multi-year. And then lastly, just trying to see what the timing is on the community project funding. I think we last reported, that they passed the appropriations bill, or we're about to pass appropriations bill. I think the last time we spoke, we were successful, in having 2 of our project funding requests included. Federal Highways, has an internal process they need to go through where they're going to allocate the funds to the various state, to both Washington and Oregon before we can, engage and try to access those funds. So, but that can't happen until that money goes out to the states. So, haven't really heard timing. I think last year it was just about a month to 6 weeks after the passage of the omnibus appropriations. So we're getting into that window, but if we hear something, we'll be able to pass that on. And that's really about it right now.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Anybody from Oregon?
Okay, thank you. And I don't see anybody from Oregon. We are going to move a little out of time due to Meg's time frame. We're going to move down to new business partnering proposal. Meg Winch.
Hey, Meg, let me jump in just for a second. I was kind of the instigator of this, and Mike found Meg. What this is a team building effort between HNTB, us, and Kiewit. And a lot of successful projects spend a little bit of money up front getting everybody aligned as far as what's important on the project. And I've personally been involved in a bunch of these. About half of them were worthless. The other half were really, really good. And we did a pre-discussion with Meg, and she's got all of the traits without me having to ask for them that I saw on the good ones. So we've asked her to come forward and talk about a proposal. Go ahead, Meg.
Sure. Well, I'll just do a brief introduction, and then unfortunately I will leave you because I'm actually facilitating a meeting today, but I was grateful to be asked to come meet you. This is an exciting project. It's one that is strategic for the Pacific Northwest, and it's one that's going to be of value to a large number of people who use the bridge. And certainly our bridges are part of our identity in Washington State and in the Pacific Northwest. So project partnering is something that's been around for about 40 years. It was initially initiated on Corps of Engineers projects with an understanding that great projects are created by people, and people who work in a coordinated way with each other are more likely to be successful on a project. So the top 3 predictors of whether or not a project is going to succeed or fail, as many of you know, have very little to do with technical expertise. You've done your due diligence, you've selected engineers, designers, and construction partners who can deliver a successful bridge project and can deliver it within a reasonable budget and reasonable schedule. So the 3 predictive factors are Does a team communicate in a way that is productive such that the right people know the right information at the right time? Does a team make the right decisions in the right time frame, and are they decisions that stick to progress a project forward? And number three, is a team have the ability to navigate its way through conflict and through disputes? And I say this in a way that is not touchy-feely. We're talking about when you have intelligent people working together to deliver a very complex project, you have to be able to communicate seamlessly, you have to be able to make decisions, and you have to be able to resolve disputes to move the project forward. So project partnering is something that we use as a vehicle to get there. I've done partnering on 12 different WSDOT projects in the state of Washington, from bridges to highway projects to ferry terminals and everything in between. And what I found is that WSDOT's approach to partnering works. They mandate it in all of their significant projects, and I've partnered with Kiewit on many of those projects recently on the fish culvert projects, but also worked with a variety of contractors around the state. And when people believe in partnering, it's extraordinarily successful. I always say that partnering is not about selecting people who you want to be with on the best day of the project, but it's building the relationships so you have the person by your side who has your back on the worst day of the project. And I think in particular for this project where you have a very tight budget, and you have a lot of people watching this project, I think it's very important to get a common definition of success and a common plan for moving the project forward.
So my experience is every project's going to run into problems, and it'll be more than one. And the real successful ones are the ones where the teams pull together and work themselves through the issue and keep running going. The projects that tend to fail are the ones that start pointing fingers at each other and start heading for the lawyers. And so I think our challenge on this one is get everybody lined up, all the companies and ourselves lined up, and then move out together. And I think Meg can help us do that.
Any discussion? Any questions?
I had a question, just curious, did we approach any other firms, or what is our operating like procurement policy?
So this can be done through professional services. Same thing we use for PFM or our consultants. How we found Meg was my own lack of knowledge of what my wife does. She is the partnering lead for WSDOT, so she runs all the partnering for WSDOT. And I was like, I need to find a partnering person, and she's like, duh, I do partnering for WSDOT. So she gave me 3 or 4 names, and I called a few different ones and thought Meg fit the project the best. She had experience with Kiewit and then experience in partnering in WSDOT. So I thought she was a good fit, and I brought her, Mike met with her, and then we had her put a proposal together so that we could bring it to you all and see what everybody thought. So
Is the proposal the letter that's in our packet?
Yes.
Or is there more of a
Yeah,
breakdown?
that was it.
So the list that was given with participants, like, is that something that we can all see or just wrap our heads around kind of?
That's part of what we'll need to work with her on. We threw some ideas out. We talked about probably a 2-phase where we'll do an internal one, small group, and then we'll do an external one in the afternoon that'll bring in the external stakeholders. So like WSDOT, ODOT, FHWA, potentially the tribes. We need to talk through that a little bit more. But yeah, that's something that we'll be developing with her in the next few weeks if we decide to go for this. Who should attend? What's the purpose of each of the meetings? Keep it small. We want to do it in a day. I've been in where they're multi-days. We like to do it in one day, get through it, get great people in the meetings, but we need to sit down and have some conversation in a day.
And then is it a given that it'll include all 12 commissioners?
It can. However you all want to do that. Whoever would have interest, I guess, in participating in it. I don't know that it has to have all 12. But that would be your all's decision to make.
And then budget wise, this is coming from where? Like
It will
under the
come out.
larger.
We were going to
contract
do a
or-
direct contract. This would be a direct contract between her and the Bridge Authority.
So an additional,
And it would come out of the grant.
grant reimbursement. So it would come out of the grant funds that we would have for the project.
was my question.
I've done several of these, and the challenge is always finding the time when you got started on a project. So starting early is better. And it gives a good foundation. What I've also found is it's really helpful to come back in 3 months or 6 months and revisit it and reinforce some of those ideas that I agreed to initially, which is always a little bit harder because everybody's a little bit busier, a little bit more pressure. But so I guess to point out this is a great proposal and everything, that seems like it, in my mind, would be worth every penny, but that's probably not the end of the.
What I've seen of these, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if I might interrupt, I think that is an excellent statement about the importance of partnering following throughout the duration of the project. We've worked on multiple projects where we've followed the project from the beginning of conceptual design all the way through warranty. And what we've learned over time is that one of the things that we can do for you is what we do for other teams, because it can be cost prohibitive to bring a consultant in for the full duration of the project, is we can help you develop a metric or a set of metrics that you can use to evaluate team performance. And you can do a number of things. One is you can make them a topic top of mind for project team agendas or even your OAC meetings. And you can also do an internal measurement or discussion of those every 3 to 4 months. But I think what we or any consultant should do is leave you with the ability to continue the partnering forward. And then you only need to bring in a consultant again if there's a problem that you need solved, which hopefully by being vigilant about the partnering efforts, that won't happen. So long story short, we should teach you to fish so that you can self-monitor.
I have just a question, and this is nothing to take away from you, Megan, your amazing work
Sure.
and all your history, but what is the procurement process that we as a already have? So we're just, this is like sort of a direct find sole source. So I just want to make sure that we're all, as a small business, I mean, it doesn't look like a lot of money in a $520 million project, but a lot of these will add up. And we need to be squeaky clean with how we're actually identifying contractors and consultants. So I need to know more about who we interviewed before we move forward. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear on that.
And we typically will go through TAHI and go through legal when we do any procurement to make sure that we're following whatever guidelines we need to follow.
Okay.
Which right now we follow under Hood River. So I'll tell you if you want to.
Yeah, this is a little over $10,000, which allows us to just to go directly. But as Mike said, he did contact with a few others, and maybe we can have as a justification memo. I chose add for this, and then that's on our basis because it's less than $150,000, which allows intermediate.
Got it. Yeah, well, I appreciate your comment because obviously our heads went to the same space, and it does make me think, do we want our governance committee to consider like what our policy should be as an authority? Like there's state limits, but maybe our comfort level, since we have an owner's rep, we don't have a staff executive director running this, is to ensure that a certain threshold then would trigger more of this discussion first and then say, yes, go. And we're all weighing in on a scope because it comes back to our founding principles also. Like, yeah, this is not a huge amount of money in the larger picture, but it's very significant even to smaller firms or minority owned firms. And if we want to be true to the values that we're saying this project holds, I think it does go down into these decisions also. And
That is on the list of the governance committee's things to do, is to develop a procurement policy for the board. It just has not been developed yet.
If
But
I
yeah, I think
might-
they should take that into account. Go ahead,
So
Mike.
sorry. If I might, two things. One is we are a certified women-owned business in the state of Washington, and we can provide you that. So I am fully in support of creating opportunities for small minority women-owned business, veteran-owned business, and disabled veteran-owned businesses. So we're both certified as a WBE as well as small business entity in the state of Washington. That said, that's also one of the things that we could cover in partnering. So partnering is not just about talking about how we feel about each other and how we feel about the project, but it's also identifying what are some of the key things that you as an organization need to get agreement around that will help you move forward on the project. And that could be one of the things that you seek to address.
Any other questions?
Going back to Marla's comments, we did develop the adoption of the authorities procurement policy. We tried, but it was focusing on the engineering and construction because it was during the period, and then we put in the backbone for the goods and services. It's kind of services, so we are following the board right law. Like especially for the small procurement, which does not need anything else. But for the intermediate procurement, we did not need any written solicitation. We were able to just like a phone vote, and then get it like a little bit of competitiveness. It's all the plans decision to small purchases.
Commissioner Berger.
Is there any consideration to asking Kiewit or any of the other participants to waive their fees in participating in something like this, or is this typically something that we would pay? Expect to pay everybody to join in.
Yeah, how much of a partner do they want to be?
Yeah.
On this bridge.
Michael Shannon, I think this might be something that you may want to address. It depends on the project, but typically the partnering fees are shared between the partners. So in most projects, the agency and the selected builder or design builder split the cost of partnering.
But there will be.
We'll just get it back to us invoice.
Anyway.
There's more paperwork for us and
Okay, this is an action item. Is there anyone who'd like to entertain a motion or to table this?
I move that we proceed and we hire partnering proposal.
Move forward with staff on the partnering.
So,
Move forward with staff.
yeah, moving forward with staff to do the procurement for a partnering proposal from Communication Resources.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just like to hear the other firms we talked to or have we heard from.
I will send that out to you. I don't recall.
Can we-
Top of my head.
Okay, so just so I'm correct, we are giving approval to have staff move forward to move into contract with this.
Yes.
All right, we'll get the meeting set up.
All right, this should be fun. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Didn't hear you, Marla.
Abstaining.
Okay, all those abstaining. Marla. With that, the motion carries. But staff will get you that info.
That's great. And then that's all
And
I'm asking. Thank you.
I think that's our first non-unanimous vote. We should all clap that we did.
Slide it over here.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna go back to the consent agenda. Thank you very much, Meg.
Thank you very much. Thank
Yep.
you.
We have 2 invoices. It's consent agenda. Would anybody like to make a motion?
The invoices.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with 2 items. Any discussion?
One quick discussion. Is this something that these are pretty standard? Do we need to bring these up every time? Because both of these are going to be every month. And I would suggest if we can, as long as the value is within the contract, value per month, like a lease and so on, we allow this to just get paid.
We, as an authority, can choose to do that. We need to move to allow staff to pay those ongoing regular monthly expected bills as accordingly. But we need to be we should be very explicit and clear in authorizing that.
So should we ask staff to develop a list of those contracts, invoices that are likely to occur monthly that we would authorize them in advance to go ahead and pay?
Second.
Sorry, I guess still though, what would be our awareness? Like, to me, I guess I'm curious, but still seeing it and having the understanding of what is going out and also obviously what's coming in, but like, I don't see this, I would be curious how burdensome is this? Because we meet pretty regularly, these are moving through, I don't think our meetings are at such a pace that you can't be cutting checks in the appropriate frame. And this is I mean, I would say there's other places to call in the packet and things that make this a 2-hour meeting. This is like a minute and it gives us all a consistent ongoing interaction with how we're spending funds on the project. So I don't like this.
I just need to speak up because we're actually not gonna, and it isn't this particular agenda item, it's the whole process. So if we get an invoice in on the 1st, it goes to the finance committee the 3rd week of the month. So we've already been sitting on an invoice for 3 weeks when it goes to them, and then it comes to the bridge authority, and then it gets paid. And these are routine ones. So there's lots of options for what we can do.
I would say just take them straight. That this seems like an unnecessary thing to have to go to the committee. In my city, it's that they come straight forward to your body that approves and authorizes, and you don't belabor it by multiple weeks of a delay.
So when
there's another piece of this though, and in fairness, Marla, I understand where you're coming from and frustration as well. We've got to get our cost reporting set up and religiously being reported to our organization here. And part of the engineering construction committee, and I know the finance committee is looking at it. We had a series of discussions with HNTB and input from Kiewit of what that report's going to look like every month. And to me, we ought to be using that report, Marla, to stay abreast of where's our money going. And this stuff that we're talking about now pretty much should be automatic. Take it out of the review cycle, unless finance wants to look at every bit of it, and that's fine with me.
I just don't think it needs the layer of going to a finance committee. But I mean, I agree with that being an extra step that is unnecessary and slowing things down, but I'm struggling to see how cumbersome the step is if that comes in on the 1st of the month and now it's the 8th and it just comes straight to us and it's a standard thing that's inserted in the packet.
Well, these two are the real easy ones.
Yeah.
Think down the road when Kiewit starts invoicing us, and their invoices will probably be 3 or 4 page, inches thick at maximum. I don't think we want to be spending time in here going through page by page by page. We've got to set up a routine where, in that particular case, to me, we've got to rely on HNTB to do their job as far as reviewing the accuracy of the invoice. We probably run it through the finance committee to make sure they understand where it is against the budget. They sign off on it, and if anything, it ought to be a rubber stamp from us, because we're not going to look at all that stuff. But somebody should.
Yeah, I think this is just, I mean, again, we are all sitting at the table as the public. We are the commissioners. We might not have been elected to these seats, but we carry the responsibility of protecting the public interest. We are not the private interests on this project or the companies coming in. And so I think when we start chipping away at these small moments that the public is looking at something, and yes, to a degree, it is a rubber stamp, but it is still a moment of a process that's being upheld and respected. And I get nervous, and now this is, on the heels of the last one, which I think was jumping a little quickly to us all making a decision when we had yet to discuss. I mean, I'm just saying, I am nervous that we are trying to get a little too energetic about streamline. And government can be frustrating and government can be slow, but there's a reason it works this way. And the thing we've invested in for 3 years as a bi-state working group and now a functioning entity that we have legislation to pass is the relationship with our community. And I just think when we're doing this out of a quick convenience, this is not going straight from invoice being received to the board that decides and deciding we don't need the committee is not slowing down or creating a late payment. So I'm just protective that I see this being a place where it sounds good, but now how many times are we making this decision? And next thing you know, nothing's getting looked at. And there are big things that maybe are getting.
Do you mind?
You first.
Okay. Is there a way, so these are expected or actual and expected expenses. So if it's within $5 of what we expect it to be or something, like we make it a dollar amount, then it comes to the board. If there's any sort of, and I'm just suggesting this, if there's any sort of deviation up or down, we need to have the finance committee look at it. And if there's any question from the finance committee, then they bring that to the board. So I'm saying, so we know we're going to pay rent. We know we're going to pay for Wi-Fi, right? Like we understand that that's a common sense. So you're going to probably get it down to the penny each time. And so if there's a way that if it's deviant, or, like I'm saying it again to recap, if there's a deviant, maybe we can pass something. So it goes, not rubber stamping, right? Because we have a policy that says if it's the same, then cut the check. But if there's deviance, then it automatically triggers the finance committee. So we have people to look it over. And if you're like, oh, I don't know, $700 more for rent, what's going on here? Then we'll bring it over.
I just think I guess more of like, it's on a court, and I guess I'm looking to Jake since he's elected on a Washington entity as well. But like, to me, there is nothing that gets paid from the city without my legislative body saying, yes, sign those checks. And I think that's an important protection. And I don't use my personnel and finance committee to look at my Wi-Fi and to look at everything else. But they see the laundry list every 2 weeks of all the things that run that city. And there's an accountability there. And there are things that through that process come to light and people get educated and start asking questions. So I would like that. I think it's important.
So the challenge back at you, Marla. So you've got a sheet of a bunch of invoices that you're looking at. When you look at those in your committee meeting, are you deciding that those are fair and reasonable and per the contract? Are you going through that level of detail? Or are you recognizing, yep, that one's here, yep, by the way, that's rent, that's every month, yep, okay, yep, okay. Or are you going down and going back and reading the contract to validate the number that's on that sheet is per the contract?
Well, I guess there's two things, because I think your question's coming from a place which I can understand of looking ahead to the scenario when Kiewit starts issuing. But these are separate to me. We're doing a contract with Kiewit. Kiewit needs to manage their funds. And if there's something that's all of a sudden flagging at a higher level, but no, I do not think that we need to be getting into the layers of their inner workings. That comes out at different checkpoints in the project. They're a direct contract. Same with HNTB. We don't see their payroll of the people working on this project, but we know what we signed and what they're supposed to be delivering. But the rent is the authority's rent. The internet is the authority's internet. There are these things that are the authority costs, and we are the authority, not Mike, not staff, not anybody. So yeah, I would actually say that $200 is too much for internet. I'm not changing it. I will sign off on it. But next year when we're planning our budget, I would push back and say, how did we land on this being our service provider? And again, these are tiny amounts, but I think it's more about our values and why we say we're here. And just there's a lot of money that is about to roll into this project. And this has now taken a little bit of time in this meeting, but typically this is like a consent agenda item. This is a quick, you're looking at it because you have had a budget or whatever our operating process is where this is getting approved. So you know what that annual cost is, and they are coming forward more as a standard like sign off. But ultimately what's not changing is that we give that authority. So no, I don't want to give that authority away.
There is two things. Ben has had his hand up for a while, and I will pitch this back over. Ben.
Yeah, I think I might have a couple of things that could help this discussion, because Marla, I hear what you're saying, and I agree, and I think there's actually some more, as much as we want to simplify some of these things, simplifying in this case, I think also creates another process where now we have, a different process for approval for these 2 or 3 items, which we're going to have to document and substantiate. And it's not going to have as clear of a line of approval back to the authority. We're going to end up having to point back to, these meeting minutes or whatever meeting we end up, making this blanket approval for. And so I think it's worth weighing what that added savings is on a relative basis. I also think that we should think about the finance committee. We changed how we're doing the committee structures, and the committee is not being a voting body. And so we really should think about, the finance committee's role, in reviewing these invoices relative to the overall body. And so, I look at it from my perspective as, being prepared to show up to these meetings, ready to discuss, the invoices and any, any questions or concerns that, that may arise, and bringing those to staff before the meeting, or being as prepared as possible coming into these meetings. There's also a consideration around our timeliness in responding to these invoices to get them approved for reimbursement. So, we need to make sure that we're reviewing invoices in as timely a manner as possible so that we can get them through our process to start the reimbursement timeline from a cash flow standpoint. So I think, we should be careful to make sure that we're not, spending 3 weeks or 4 weeks getting to review, if we can cut that down to a more expedited schedule. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I would say this is the most amount of time I've ever spent on a consent in my life. But I would say I've heard what you are saying, Marla, and I absolutely agree. At least in Washington, and I know we're in Oregon, but in Washington, the legislative or the executive or legislative authority has to sign off on all bills. There is a way that you can prepay the bills if you have a policy in place that can go through it. But it's still in the incomes, even if you've already paid it, it still goes in front of us in order to agree to it. And that might be something that we can push off to the governance committee to look at creating that policy so that we can get the bills paid on time. But in the end, it still goes in front of the board, because that packet is open and available to the people. It's not the thick page, it's the front page that says this bill for this much.
Well, I think what we're bringing up here, and I apologize for stopping things, but it's really important because we're in the easy phase of the job right now. It's going to get really big and heavy duty here in the not too distant future. And we don't really have the system set up yet, how we want to run this. Right. So now is the time to get it fixed. Which
I think leads us to this conversation, which is an apt and perfect conversation about getting that process set up with the consent of the board. I would say we push it to the governance committee to come up with that process to bring it back to the board for adoption. Does that sound good for everyone?
And I would include in that, if we're going to push some things to the governance committee to talk about Catherine's, point about other contracting and developing some sort of a procurement, dollar level, or I think that all falls into that same bucket of things. We sort of need the governance committee to start bringing us some procedures that we live by, relevant to expenditures.
So the two we're talking about is procurement and the criteria. Competitive bids on procurement.
Correct.
Which is different than perhaps what HRWSBA was doing. And the second one is approval and processing of invoices.
Sure. I mean, I just think all those things fall into that bucket, though. We need to start developing those tools that we can lean on.
And that's exactly what Arthur gets for not showing up to the meeting.
I'm trying to be him as best I can. I thought you were him.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
I'd like to just add one thing for kind of consideration. One of the things that Marla said is efficiency is good, but being too efficient can hurt us as well.
Yeah.
And we're hearing some pushback on the aesthetics committee. Why is it so? Why do we have to make decisions so quickly and that sort of thing? And I think Marla's point is that there's inherent in a public process. It's messy, but sometimes it's faster to slow down just a little bit. Make sure we dot the I's and cross the T's, or we'll get hung up and stumble somewhere. So, I mean, just like we have a lot of engineers in the room that can really streamline things, but let's take a deep breath before we do it on everybody.
I would just say, if I may for a moment, put my communications subcommittee hat on. Seeing that line item on the agenda, so we have not had a lot of public comment or public participation, but that doesn't suggest that a lot of the public didn't at least open up the agenda packet and do a quick scan. I do it with the Hood River City, commission still because I'm a nerd, but other people do. And seeing that line item in there that just simply says invoice approvals, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't read any depth into that for people, but it does suggest from a communication standpoint, we are saying we're doing this thing. We're actually actively looking at the things that we're spending money on. That in and of itself is an important piece of the communications puzzle. Just that, those two words and an agenda item.
Absolutely. And also for, the consent agenda, we get the packet, and if there's anything that's in the consent agenda at the beginning you can say at the full consent agenda by a number. And then also this time when we open it up, the same thing, we can pull those for further discussion. You have last, and then I'm gonna call the question.
I'll make it quick. We'll bring this to the next meeting. We do have workflows for invoices on how they're flowing through. You'll be surprised at how many people are actually looking at it, and how many steps there are to actually get an invoice to you. But I think there's two conversations going on that I want to make sure everybody's aware of. One is monthly recurring billings, right? And that's different than contract billings that are through professional services contracts, right? Be it DWITs, ours, whatever. There's different processes for both. And they're totally different in some ways, right? Recurring billings are just monthly, same thing coming in. We can throw them on invoice or on an agenda. Not really a big deal to do that. When it comes to the Kiewit contract, our contract, and you start getting into payroll and what is a payroll correct, and is person's hours correct, and is it on the right chart line, and is it on the right activity, and the other 1,500 things we look at whenever does it match the contract, and was it per the contract, and all those things. That all will get, if we start to get into those details in this meeting, we will need to extend this to a 3 or 4 hour meeting. I don't think I heard Marla saying that she wanted to do that. I think she recognizes there's a difference between this and the detail that needs to be going into individual professional service contracts, but just want everybody to realize there is a difference. And we'll bring those workflows to you. We'll actually, Eric's flipping through them.
I'm looking for the invoice for you.
It's in there somewhere.
It's in there.
Yeah, we can send it out so everybody can see it. We're finalizing those as far as where and who people are involved and how they're involved. But generally, that was our thought was, the engineering one will go to the engineering committee. It'll go to the finance committee to check cash flow. Ultimately, it will end up in the bridge authorities decision making because they're the only one that can actually say pay the invoice. But once we get that timing down, we are going to have to look at the timing that we're making those decisions. And I think it may be something that requires us to have special meetings or have more regular meetings in order to approve those things. So all that Jesus has. I was trying to be quick, but there's a lot to that.
It's good education, and I think we all need to be on the same page on how much is going on behind the scenes, as well as the public needs to be quite aware of that as well. That we don't make any decisions in vacuums. Okay, with that, there's been a motion and a second on the table to approve the consent agenda. Whoever said this is gonna be a short meeting, don't you ever say it again. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay, funding and finance.
We had like a $14 invoice last time that we talked about. It was great. And we can talk about that if you really want. So yeah, we go through the process quite a bit. Aside, I have no problem including all these invoices in the packet. I think we should for visibility. If we don't, then make it necessarily just spend as much time going through them as much as we did. It's been a while. So a few updates on the cash flow forecast. As soon as we get some updated Hewitt numbers, funding source dates, and a couple other things I want to get confirmed, I can send you guys all updated cash flow forecast. So the numbers are okay. We still looking at May of next year. Since I talked to you guys last time, we had a meeting to get an indicative rating for TIFIA with Kroll. We went through a presentation with them and asked them to provide us with an indicative rating based on 3 scenarios, 50 million, 95, and 105. Each of those were based on different debt service coverage ratios. That's why those numbers were picked. We're supposed to get that back soon. Do we have a date on exactly when we're going to get that back? Because I know it's going to be like any time now.
I think they said a couple of weeks after meeting last week.
The end of this month, I believe is what they said, the end of April.
Yeah, I think
On the last call, right?
Yeah. It's gonna be pretty close to the same timing as the letter of intent. Go out.
Yeah, so we might see that next meeting.
Maybe.
Putting it out there. Maybe it happens. Hopefully it does. We also had a meeting with the HRWSBA, where we reviewed our reimbursement process, the whole workflows thing, the invoices and going through the grants reimbursements. Talked about submitting those using the Delphi system, which is super fun for everyone to use.
Yay.
Yeah,
sure. Don't let that
expire. Our grants in there.
Just so you guys know, just getting into the system is an acconnectment.
It is.
So
It is.
Don't ever let that expire.
Yeah, log in at least once a month.
Yeah.
No matter. Been there, done that.
yes, you can gather by this nodding that this is good. We talked with them about the raise grant as well as infra. Talked about over the life of the project a tapering match. So instead of say every bill or every month having to match the certain percentages with federal funds, state funds, local, et cetera, for every little thing, we could do over the course, the lifetime of the project. So as long as at the end,
God.
we're not. We talked about it. We talked about it, and we're going through trying to get that done. So
we're pretty much okay with it. So
we received positive feedback at the time.
Yeah.
We're not done yet. We will have an update once, assuming we are successful in doing that. That would be an important thing to get. We also talked to them about sliding scales in terms of the percentages of money that we can use in terms of federal, state, local, et cetera. Since they told us we can not tell them, but find out which option works best for us and use that, which was, if I remember the number right, it's about 89%.
Yes, for our organ.
Yeah. So that's also good. It gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of our federal funding versus state funding versus local. So waiting on final approval from them on those 2 things. And generally it's a nice, productive meeting full of warm fuzzies from Commissioner Fox.
Any questions on the finance report? Thank you. Keep up the good work and the warm fuzzies.
That's Commissioner Fox's thing.
Yeah. Engineering and construction by Commissioner Fuzzy Fox.
Thanks, Rip. We're making this. Yeah, I'll start out, but you guys jump in. So we had a pretty good discussion. We started off with some insights to the recent Warm Springs discussion, which we're going to talk about later. I'm not going to talk about that now. We went into project reporting, basically the WBS, which is a work breakdown structure, contracting work breakdown structure, OBS, which is organizational breakdown structure, and how we're going to do all of this on this particular project and what values are we going to be tracking for reporting of progress. This is on the budget side of the house. There's a second piece to it, which is your funding, if you will, your funding BS, WBS. So there's an intersection between the two that the reports are going to have to be able to show us. So on the WBS, it's how are you going to build the project? And here are the costs associated with it. Here's your budget value. Here's your earned value. In other words, what portion of the budget have you completed? And your actual cost is what did it actually cost to get that work done? And there's some ratios that we're going to teach everybody what to look for. Some are good, some are bad. Are you over budget, under budget, ahead of schedule, behind schedule? And then how are you doing against your funding profile and your funding categories as well? So it's a multi dimension model that we're looking at this thing. So we had some pretty good discussions about that.
So I don't, that was me.
So in the next couple of meetings, I think you'll see more about that as we start to move into with Kiewit, phase 1A budget, and then move into the total project budget at the end of this fiscal year. So we spent a lot of time talking about that. Other things?
We are heading to Vancouver to actually meet with Kiewit on Wednesday and Thursday, which is really exciting to get more integrated with that team and to hear their ideas. And we're also going through the 1A schedule today. And then we have a couple of things on our to-do list. But
yeah, and we've got, as we see there with Eric, we've got flow charts that have been started, some completed.
I'm absorbing them by carrying them around.
Let me tell you, it didn't work that way. I tried.
If you're interested in the flow charts, let me know and I'll send them out to everybody. Some point we will do that. There's bunches of them, but I think if you want reading material, we'll send them out to everybody. Read them.
A suggestion, get a cup of coffee when you get them.
We will send them out to you so you can take a look at them.
Simple.
That's kind of the end of the report.
Okay.
Just check them.
Yeah, I'm gonna take out the in progress ones.
Since you brought that up, you are now next.
So aesthetics committee, we had our follow-up meeting that was requested by the committee last week. Wasn't quite as well attended as the workshop, but we did give us an opportunity to kind of test back some of our themes that we've been working on. So the theme is water, volcano, earth, water is kind of the primary theme. It's basically natural elements and some secondary themes. There are three that are emerging. One is one community. So kind of the connector between one community. The second is I just blanked. The one we're having trouble with is honesty in materials and design. People are having a hard time grabbing onto that one. Second one, gosh, sorry.
It's okay. One community.
One community. And I've just lost it completely. Yeah. Anyway, so those are the three resonated well. The truth in kind of materials and design, there's a question mark on that. What we're in the process of doing is getting ready to talk to the community about this. And the kind of discussion is how far is that? Are you informing or are you asking? And we're kind of having that discussion. And trying to land on that. And, you know, you've heard most of that. I don't think we're fully resolved on whether we're asking or suggesting. And then it kind of goes into more finite pieces about railings and lighting and that sort of thing, and it gets a little more granular. I think one of the things that's emerging is our committee is composed of a broad range of people, some that are really looking for that overarching idea of one community that starts to tie it together, others that are really focused on a more, you know, what's that rail look like? Is it historic looking? Is it modern looking? Is it shiny? Is it soft? Is it so? I think trying to reconcile that in the community, I think, is one of the issues that's kind of emerging. So we'll have the open house. I hope we have good participation by the committee members, and we'll see where we go from there. Yes.
Two things to add to that. One is we have been trying to keep the aesthetics committee to aesthetics. I'm saying that wrong. But keeping them to aesthetics, and that if it gets off into engineering decisions, we have been saying that's something you should bring to the board. An example would be going to a cable stay bridge from a segmental bridge. That's not something the aesthetics committee, it's distracting from the aesthetics committee. So we've been saying, hey, that's a great thing for you to come have a discussion with the board and let them come here and have that discussion. Fortunately, they did not show up. But I did too. And also things like widths, you know, that are being asked about, you know, the configuration of the bike lanes and those things aren't, again, aesthetics. They're more, you know, engineering decisions. And we felt like it was best to bring those to the board and have you all address that rather than having the aesthetics committee try to address some of those items. So
I think one of the things that seemed to be, and I don't know, you were at the meeting, that was helpful for me is just acknowledging, look, we have a deck width.
Yeah.
And how we allocate that width is probably going to change over time.
Yeah.
There's going to be a decision that needs to be made initially, but as needs change and needs evolve and transportation changes, that could very easily evolve over time. Having a bridge structure that will accommodate that probably is the outgrowth.
That's the key thing, you know,
yeah. So, and I think kind of getting to some of those and knowing where they happen is, until you have the discussion and you're right there, it's hard to kind of foresee it.
we've also been reminding folks that this is a 25-year-old project and that there were years of discussions about the planning that happened throughout the NEPA phase. Understanding things change, but still there was been 25 years of discussion to get to where we are today. And that, you know, we're really in some ways past the point of some of those things. And just making sure people kind of understand that is one of the problems with something taking 25 years. But the other thing also is tribal input is very critical, both on the aesthetics piece, but also we are under the mitigation piece, and this is something else that we need to bring back to you all to walk you through that. And I've got our NEPA person putting together a plan to do that. We need to walk you all through the commitments. I know I've shared it once, but I think we need to get into some detail on it. The commitments that were made during NEPA, and what we need to live up to regarding those commitments. And that is separate from the aesthetics committee. It's separate from the design in some ways of the bridge. But it's something that I think is going to require community input. It's going to require tribal input. And we need to make sure we start engaging you all on that. So that's something else that we're going to be bringing back. But those are some things we've also been trying to deal with. And we got an email from ODOT related to that. And they're helping them separate those things as well. That, you know, there's the aesthetics committee is just one piece of all the commitments that were made during NEPA. So
those start and stops is not easy to,
not always completely easy to separate. Yeah. So, but.
So Hinkle Middle School, 17th. Folks seeing y'all there.
Any questions? None? Okay. We will skip the governance, admin, and operations since Arthur is on vacation and we will get us closer to being on schedule, and we'll move into new business for the next door contract. Staff update.
So as part of our contract, now that that's under the Bridge Authority, it says that if we want to subcontract or add somebody under our contract, we need to bring it to the Bridge Authority for approval. So it was requested by a couple commissioners that we add the ability to do full Spanish outreach. So Next Door is a Spanish firm. I don't know if they're Spanish, I may be saying that incorrectly, but they are a sub who does deals in doing Spanish outreach, and we are requesting approval to add them under the JLA contract. We're not asking for additional budget. It'll come out of their existing budget, just to add that firm on Next Door as a sub to be able to do Spanish outreach in a better way than what we have the ability to do now. So
I think there were two components. There was the language and the outreach.
and
to
the
the
outreach,
community.
yeah, it's anything Spanish related. They would help to put that information. Right now, it's geared more towards the aesthetics committee, but then we would have access to them if we needed something else. So we just needed, like I said, bring it to you all for approval to add them on as a sub.
Are we currently translating these meetings?
No, not these meetings are not being trained.
Is that part of this, or that would be an additional cost?
That would be something separate. This is just for them
That's-
to help with the aesthetic stuff. I think we're translating it, right?
So it's just the aesthetics.
Right now, it's for them to help support the aesthetics.
How are we doing the rest of it? You know, like public outreach, don't we?
Some of it has been done by JLA. Yeah.
JLA's team that is bilingual.
This is stuff that's kind of outside of their ability to purely do 100% aesthetics.
Yeah.
Yeah, the right answer.
What's up, again, then I'm having a little trouble. What's outside of their ability? What
So
are we asking them to do that's different?
Do you want to detail why we need Next Door that covers things that JLA is not able to cover?
Yeah, so happy to share. So at JLA we have so Stacy, that most of you have met, who's on the project, she is pretty fluent in Spanish, and then Andrea is our graphic designer, and she is fluent in Spanish. But that is, the extent of the people on our team who speak Spanish, and so Andrea does not have time. She's not able to commit, enough time to this project, and Stacy also has other projects, and so this contract enables us to do more robust outreach in Spanish that is specifically based here in the community with people. This firm is based here and is familiar with the community, and not just the language but the culture, and it just enables us to not, in the past we've translated a lot of social media posts and things like that. This enables us to go out to the community and have a Spanish language workshop that's just for the Spanish community, things like that. So it's just a much higher level than we would be able to do ourselves at JLA.
It's more staff augmentation.
Yeah. There, in our first meeting, there was a specific comment about we all look the same here. Where is the rest of our community? And I think this started as an effort to reach out to the Spanish speaking community. It's taken a while to get to this point, but so how we plug that in, I think, will be a little bit of a challenge, but if we don't get started, we're not going to get there. So
I think this is something, and I don't remember if this was part of the communications plan or not, that JLA put together. So I think as we're getting ready to do our Amendment 6, which is phase 1A for the contract, we should make sure that if we are going to include anything like this, that it's included in that.
Yeah, I think the way this is coming forward now, as I understand it, is it's already accounted for. It's more just our own policy that's triggering it to come up to this level. But I mean, Next Door is like the largest social service agency provider in the gorge. And so their depth of relationships and engagement with some of our smaller minority populations is significant and beneficial. And I think to the points that Eric and Anna were making, this would be real intentional outreach, having a workshop where they are the target, not the secondary add-on. And I do think it would be beneficial. And to your point, yes, I think if we want that level of support to make sure that we do effective meetings and messaging that's speaking to our Spanish population, not just translating the English diction or version of something. Thinking about that in a future amendment would make sense, but I understand this to be something that's already kind of factored in.
It is correct. It's not an increase to our current budget. It's just bringing them on to provide these services, but I don't believe we included any of this in our phase 1A, other than just the translations I think they've been doing. Is that correct, Dana?
I believe Jess did include a Spanish outreach for every outreach round in phase 1A. And I think she was thinking that Nextdoor would be able to provide that.
Okay. But it's included in that number that we would be in. Can you double check on that and make sure?
I would be happy to double check. Yeah.
Okay.
So this contract would be to JLA, or would it be?
This is just H&T. It just allows H&TB through JLA to add them as a sub-consultant. Okay. We're not allowed to add subs without asking.
Tier 2.
What's that?
Tier 2.
Tier 2.
There
Yes.
is a recommended action of approving Nextdoor to contract with Spanish language to existing owners rep contract as a second sub-tier consultant under JLA for the production of Spanish material and outreach. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion?
I would suggest that we consider consider this, if we're actually serious about reaching out to and bringing more people to the table. I think having these meetings live translated like they do for school board meetings, like they do for foster care parent meetings, like I understand it's expense, but if we actually want to bring people to the table, I think we need to consider that they would come if they could fully understand what was happening. And I think it's a great step, and I really appreciate the fact that this is happening, but I think there may be consideration if they come back and say they want more information, that we should be ready to say yes.
Yeah, and I would just piggyback on that and say that to include like agendas translated, just the full package of everything that we're doing. If Nextdoor can be a conduit to make that happen. And we can talk, you guys must do it at the city level, right? To some degree, or you guys do it at the county level?
River does.
Yeah, so if there's some
translation.
Do you do it with Nextdoor, or do you guys?
People are on call in case people need translation.
So it seems like within this group, there's some way to kind of help get that facilitated, but it seems important that it's a full bucket of translation, not just single committee level. That'd be my input.
We're paying them to do this. Are we also going to do outreach for the 17th to Spanish language radio stations to try to get people to show up? Is that on the plan?
I'd be happy to speak to that. We are working with, I'm not sure about radio specifically, but we have provided materials to the Nextdoor in Spanish for them specifically to promote the open house on the 17th to the Spanish speaking community. So they're going to share those with their networks.
What was that?
I would say it would be good to plug it on It's Radio Tierra, the Spanish outlet.
It's Radio Tierra.
Maybe we can just get a spot and have somebody that can speak to preview it.
Okay, there's a motion, second on the table. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, I would say we are not getting into public comment in English, so maybe we could some in Spanish.
Yeah.
Perfect.
See the translator.
Okay, we're gonna move into informational items. IGA for the Gorge Commission, this was brought up on the agenda. Do you have to take up on the discussion?
I asked for it to be added, so I took a look through the comments that came back from the president of the Gorge, and it may be on me that I had not seen this IGA before. I wasn't sure if this had come to the commission previously. But I was fairly surprised when I got into the meat of their comments. I was like, oh, it does strike me as interesting or odd that Hood River County would have planning authority or enforcement authority within Klickitat County. And I just wasn't even sure if this was possible. I had just a lot of questions around the governmental mechanics of such an agreement. And if it's something that we need to be involved in, or if it's something that is really between two entities that are not us, and therefore we're just sort of informed that this is happening.
And others can weigh in on this. The way I understand it is that the Columbia River Gorge Commission routinely does an IGA with Hood River County to administer this element of their permit. So in the conversations we've had with them is that once we get done with the aesthetics committee, we have to go through the Gorge Commission to get a permit for the project.
Mm-hmm.
And that process won't start until after we get the aesthetics committee finished. They are from afar watching it, but they're not participating because they have another duty as a decision maker on what meets the management plan.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't really an IGA that directly is with us in any way. It's between the county and the Gorge Commission. I think the friends were just simply pointing out the questions and saying, hey, we don't know that you can do what you're proposing to do legally. So I think they often do that to each other. So I think that they were just informing us that they were asking the question of, the Gorge on where or how they were basing the agreement and how it was being drafted. So I think it's something for us to watch and keep aware of and find out how the Gorge Commission is going to react, because I think it may end up affecting us, because if Hood River County can only roll on half the bridge, how are we going to get a rolling on the other half of the bridge? So I think we need to pay attention from that point and find out what they decide to do for that reason, because we will then get, we will get input from this side, but then who do we ask on this side to get the same approval, and is it consistent? So it could cause issues for us if that would end up being different.
So the real question is, what is the difference between Article 75 and Article 352, 682, or whatever it is? And it seems to me that what they're suggesting is the Gorge Commission would do the Klickitat County side, and Hood River would do the Hood River side. Hood River's ordinance, near as I can tell, parallels the federal ordinance. I'm sure there's some.
Do you know the background on why that county has this $5?
Oh, yeah, yes, I do. Yes, I do. That question. But I believe that the bridge lands within the city of White Sands. So Klickitat County wouldn't have anything to do.
That federal ordinance is specific and that it requires the county jurisdiction. Not the municipality.
But it doesn't, so like anything within the urban growth boundaries, we still manage. Anything within the cities manage.
Right.
Anything within the Gorge Commission bounds outside of that, the Gorge Commission manages in Klickitat County.
Right. And for this instance, what it is it's specifically the county requirements or the federal requirements. So if the county hasn't taken on their own requirements, then it reverts back to the federal requirements, the way I read it. So in each document's 250, 270 pages. So there's a lot of little nuance, but the outlines almost mimic each other exactly. And the Gorge Commission basically approves Hood River's county every time they amend it. So So I think that's where it seems like they may have some oversight, and I don't know why Clickitat County doesn't have a scenic area ordinance. I don't, does White Salmon?
This is. I create enough problems making these meetings long.
So I guess from my perspective, what I would hate to see is having two jurisdictions running concurrently at the same time. In most instances, it's over water for the most part, or it's within city bounds. So the county's running that permit process. The Gorge Commission does have the staff. They do have, because they run all the permitting through Clickitat County. I would say Hood River and the Gorge Commission need to figure out who's going to do it. If they need something from Clickitat County to let Hood River County run it, or the authorization because of a technicality, that's something we could take in front of the BOCC, which I just want to ensure that only one group is running point on this.
Did you get into it all the way, Seth?
I didn't know. I was looking for
the way I read it. I think the only out would be to have the Gorge Commission take over as lead agency on both sides of the bridges. So what their contention is the Gorge Commission can't authorize a lead agency in one state to be the lead agency in adjacent state and adjacent.
I thought what they were recommending was if they were to delegate to Hood River County this responsibility, that in that delegation, they clearly stipulate and call out the rule that Hood River County has to apply when they're evaluating the portion of it that's in Clickitat.
That might be the other way.
So that there's just still one entity, but
two rules.
That correct. That their evaluation of it has to still be true to both areas. So right now, so I kind of run it as wow, good catch. Because as the way it is right now, it's almost like the Clickitat County interests are getting lost. For however historically they've wanted to hold to these other rules, and their changes would continue to make clear that those other rules apply. But I saw it as still it's one entity doing it, Hood River County, and they've got to be on board with the application of two different things.
And did you have any insight into their statement in there that said, here are some changes that we would suggest, but we have concerns about the overall structure of this? And I kind of was like, it sounded like they had some deeper concerns that I certainly couldn't read between the lines myself and figure out what they were.
Do you want to follow up with the Georgia Commission? Because I'm assuming they probably ran into something similar to the house. It was just done recently, so maybe ask them what they did there.
Is the Dallas Bridge inside it?
Yeah, it's inside.
Oh, because it ends right there.
No, it doesn't.
The scenic area?
That goes farther, yeah.
So we could follow up with the Gorge Commission, find out what their response is. If we want, we could engage our legal. I don't know if us being an Oregon business comes into play or not for the bridge. Because I think the National Scenic Area coverage only is from shoreline to shoreline. So I don't know, because we're a Oregon organization, if that changes that at all or not. But if you want, we could just follow up with them and come back and let us know.
I think we definitely want to stay on top of this. So directing staff to stay on top of this is a good thing for bringing it up. I was reading that email too, going layers. Layers. Okay, moving up on procurement schedule, risk register. Yeah.
It has not changed from the last one. We will have our kickoff risk register meeting with I think it was in early May. So we'll go through the risk register and the rankings of the register with them, and then there probably will be some updates from that meeting as to what the top risks are. We'll continue to monitor that.
And I think off of that meeting, we could have finished completing out the register, including action items and who's going to do what and when.
And that'll be part of that meeting, is adding some qualitative and quantitative cost as well, and filling in some of that.
While you're thinking, we've got a hand raised by Scott. Okay.
Hi, just hi, just briefly, just for your information, the Dalles Bridge actually defines the upper limit of the gorge scenic area. In fact, it's down the center of it. The west side of the Dalles Bridge is in the gorge scenic area, and the east side is not.
Sorry, I was Googling that because I thought it was really close. Okay, let's go inland. I don't know, but I just know that right there on 84, there's a big sign that says leaving. And I just couldn't remember if I was just past the bridge or on this side of the bridge, but apparently I was right at the bridge.
It is the bridge. Yep.
Yeah, it is the bridge. Or the Washington's. Oh, I have no idea on that side.
Yeah, it goes all the way to almost Mary Hill Museum on the Washington side.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay.
It is the Dow on the Oregon side.
It doesn't look like it on their map. On
Interesting.
recreation.gov.
Okay.
But interesting.
So we continue with the information.
Please.
Poor Mike, can we move
No,
on?
I wasn't sure if we were done. So we are starting to have conversations around the government relations set up for this year. So we had an initial meeting last Wednesday. Is that right? We're working on setting up a separate monthly meeting with that group. And to work with our lobbyists on both sides to establish that. We also are working through the Government Relations Committee to renew the legislative contracts for both Oregon and Washington and for the federal. So that'll need to come back to the board as far as determining what scope they will need to have for this next year. The state level is probably similar to what it was, but the federal level is the one that I see as maybe being different. But we'll need to bring that back as well, and we'll have those conversations. We have supposed to have a meeting on Memorial Day, 5/27. So the question there is, do you want to cancel that meeting? Do you want to move that meeting up or later? Which means we would have meetings back to back. My preference would be not to do that. But what would you prefer to do?
I would suggest that we cancel it. If there's something that comes up, we do a special meeting if it's that critical. But that's just me.
I concur with. Does that need a motion to cancel a meeting?
Well, let's talk about it first. Somebody got a strong opinion either way.
I agree with canceling it.
They're holidays for a reason.
Or we could have it at Rick's house.
We could. I doubt anybody can get around. It's Memorial Day. And I don't believe we need a motion to cancel a meeting. I think it is an action of the chair or chairs.
Okay.
In Oregon.
It is.
All right. We're in Oregon laws. One law at a time. Okay, does that sound good for everyone?
Yeah.
All right. Because you weren't gonna be there anyways, I know. So,
So this is, excuse me, I'm sorry. This is Mark Reno. My question is on a going forward basis, do you want to have so many holidays on Mondays? Do you want to schedule them normally for the next Tuesday, or just cancel them, or take it on an ad hoc basis?
So we've been talking, Mark, about moving, as this really gets ripping, to Monday, only one Monday a month meetings if we can, because there's going to be so many more meetings of the subcommittees and we're in 1A. And so I think if we move to a once a month meeting, there's a good chance you'll be able to skip a holiday in there. Moving to Tuesdays absolutely won't work for me.
Yeah, it won't work usually for me.
Yeah.
So we'll go back and look at the calendar and figure out which ones are in conflict and go ahead and get that changed for the year.
Okay, moving on.
You officially have a phone number?
Oh, thank God. How fun.
Expand on the phone number?
It rings to me and we also have voice. So
We'll be monitoring. Oh, awesome.
If anybody wants us to put you on the list, I don't know if we can actually do this or not, but
No.
you accepted love to get extra phone calls.
Take my picture down.
Yes.
So that's the number we can use when we register for websites and stuff.
Yeah, so this is this is the authority's official phone number. So we will start putting it on
Official.
the website. We'll put it on everything that relates to the authority when people want to. This is your number. So.
And keeping track of how long it takes to start getting solicitation calls.
Who did we end up going through?
It's through Zoom, so, yeah.
Oh, cool.
And it's how much?
I think it's like $10 to $14.
$14, I think, yeah.
Wow. No, it was 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna skip 6 because we're gonna do that later. Full revenue report. Debbie, if you wanna.
You crossed over the $2 million mark. Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
Milestone. So that includes interest, but yeah. Yep. And I'm working, I hope, did our 2 co-chairs bring their bank information? Well, apparently. Okay, well, if not, I can get it from you tomorrow. Yes, you're losing your fuzzy, fuzzy adjective. Anyway, we'll be getting the bank account set up. So I'll be moving that money into your very own bank account and you'll start getting bank statements from, well, I'll give them to the finance committee to do whatever with. Having bank statements.
Yeah. We did talk about, I don't know, Debbie, you want to talk a little bit about the credit card and our thoughts on.
Oh, yes. We've also talked about getting a credit card for some of these recurring charges to get that onto. So it's most agencies have them.
So now it's mine.
Are we on track? Is this as expected? Is this above the line, below the line?
It's definitely on track. Yeah. Okay. So the winter months are always tough because we have, snow events. We have to do, it seems like, and I don't know why it isn't I was gonna say, you'd think that this would happen more in the summer, but it seems like we try to fit all that stuff in. Well, and we try to avoid the big traffic times. Yeah. Because like the wire ropes, we really had talked about doing in October, and then there was all the harvest stuff going on. So we didn't want to interrupt traffic for harvest. So that got pushed into November. So there's things like that we look at. So the winters are really fluctuate a lot, but summers are definitely higher numbers. So we're doing good.
Right. That's right. And I don't have any. All right. Do we have any questions on upcoming action items from anyone? Hearing none. We don't have a presentation today, but we will be having a raised grant scope overview sometime soon. Our announcements, we will have on April 17th, 2024, the Bridge Aesthetics Committee opened public house at Hinkle Middle School from 5 to 7. Our next meeting will be Monday, April 22nd, 2024 from 2 to 4. We will be, how long are we going to be in the session? 30 minutes, 15 minutes. Oh, that's right, because you got to give the time so we can.
I bet you it's 30. I would.
Oregon doesn't require it, I don't think.
Yeah, we did. An estimation of about how much executive session is going to be in time wise. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's say 1A, you can always reappear and say,
Are we expecting to take action coming up?
Yes.
We are.
Yes.
We still have to come back into open session anyway to close.
To close, I know. I was just figuring whether or not we'd actually shut it out completely or just make them up.
We're keeping our legal team.
Yeah. Okay.
We have to shut it down except to everyone outside of.
Yes.
So you do a breakout room.
That's true.
Not for today, but in the future, that's a pretty good.
We will be moving into executive session in accordance with ORS 192.660 RNG for 20 minutes, which may be extended. And then we will enter back out. If anyone would like to join back in, we will open Zoom back up at that time. So if you're sitting in the waiting room, we will let you in when we come out of executive session. So I would direct staff to remove everyone except for legal and then admit people.
Can I do that?
Oh, yes, you can. You're gonna be
Like, right,
or
but
you're not supposed to just leave.
So if you're still online and not part of the legal staff, please exit out.